Commodities are often used as a hedge against inflation, so who better to react to Bullard's comments while giving us insight into the recent surge in commodities than Peter Schiff, president of Euro-Pacific Capital, a gold bull, and had been sounding the clarion call for quite some time about a lot of things, Peter, that we've seen come to pass. But let's get your first comment on what Mr. Bullard had to say.
Well, you know, I don't give any credibility to what the Federal Reserve is doing. I don't think they've learned anything from their prior mistakes. I mean, they lowered interest rates too much in the first place following the bursting of the NASDAQ bubble. They're making the same mistake now following the bursting of the housing bubble, and they left them too low for too long. I see no evidence that the Fed has learned anything from its mistakes. It's repeating them now on a grander scale, and unfortunately, we've got a bigger disaster in our future as a result.
Well, let's see. Bullard says he believes asset sales should precede interest rate hikes in Fed strategy. So, in other words, they're going to get rid of some of their portfolio that they're holding, try to sell that off. Is that good or bad news for gold bugs?
Well, first of all, they're not going to be able to sell it because there's no one that's going to be there to buy. I mean, that's going to be the big problem for the Fed is they can't unwind it. And the minute they start selling their assets, of course, interest rates rise simultaneously because you're putting this debt into the market. But, I mean, gold is going to go up regardless. I mean, your reporter mentioned that I must be happy today because the price of gold is going up. I mean, I know gold is going to go up. I'm happy when the price comes down so I can buy more.
But, Peter, let's sort of drill down on your perspective here about the Fed. You just said that the interest rates would jump as soon as they start to exit all of the efforts that they've been putting together to prop up the market. What is going to be the market response when we start to see interest rates jump? And do you have a sense of how high they'll go?
Well, no, I mean, they're going to go a lot higher. I mean, there's no way to tell for sure. But I think the big move, you know, right now there's a lot of attention being focused on sovereign debt risk. But it's in the wrong place. People are worried about some of the smaller countries in Europe. They should be worried about the United States. And when attention is turned to our ability to pay our debts, not just whether or not we're going to default, but the more important issue, whether or not we're going to print money to pay our bills because we have no way of doing it legitimately, then you're going to see a more rapid rise in the price of gold, and you're going to see the dollar starting to fall, not just against gold, but against all the currencies, including the euro.
But, Peter, clearly the world community is saying that we have a lot of problems with the United States for all the problems that you just mentioned. However, the problems that Europe has are more severe, and therefore there is a flight to the dollar right now.
No,
are they totally wrong?
Yeah, they are totally wrong. They're not more severe. They're actually more severe here. I mean, if you look at our debt to GDP, it's already almost 90% right now. It's going to exceed 100% a year from now, but that's only if you account the actual federal debt. If you add on all the agency debt, like Freddie and Fannie, or the contingency liabilities of like Social Security and Medicare, it's off the charts.
It is.
And then if you look at the fact that our GDP is all a bunch of fluff and so much of it is made up of services, we are in serious, serious trouble. You know, right now the government, for every dollar the government collects in taxes, they're spending $1.60.
Well, what
That's
must you have thought, Peter, when the dollar rallied the last couple of days of last week? I mean, that was the best anybody could find as far as flight to quality?
Well, you know, as long as the dollar is the reserve currency, and for now it's hanging on to that position, whenever there's a problem in another country, everybody buys the dollar. And so we benefit from everybody else's problems. But at some point, there's going to be a light switch that's going to go off, and people are going to realize that they're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. You know, for a while, people do foolish things. Look how long people bought houses or bought subprime mortgages. All of a sudden, they figured it out, and the whole thing collapsed.
Okay,
the same thing will happen with the dollar.
Let's just paint out your scenario from your perspective. How is it going to collapse? What happens? Does the United States first lose its AAA, then go bankrupt, or what?
Well, I don't know when we're going to lose that rating. As far as I'm concerned, we don't deserve it right now. So it's, you know, it doesn't really matter when these rating agencies wake up to reality. But look, we have to look at the things that are happening. First of all, look at Social Security.
Hold on a second, Peter. We've gone through the list of what's happening now, and to a large extent, I agree with some of your diagnosis of what the problem is. But what is going to come? How is this whole house of cards going to collapse from your perspective?
Well, who knows exactly how, but we're not going to be able to keep selling our debt. I mean, right now, the Social Security fund now has just turned into negative, where the government is collecting less in Social Security taxes than it's paying out in benefits. So that's a huge problem. That's just starting right now.
But, Peter,
but at some point, yes?
What is the best way to invest with your belief that that will happen? Put aside gold for the moment, because we know you're supportive of that. But where do people put their money if they believe that you're absolutely correct on some of these predictions?
Yeah, well, they have to understand that the biggest casualty is going to be the dollar. It's going to be the purchasing power of our currency, because I believe what the Federal Reserve is going to do when the world doesn't want to buy our debt, that Ben Bernanke is going to crank out the printing presses and he's going to buy it, and it's going to punish everybody who has savings in dollars, everybody who has any asset denominated in dollars. And so you have to move away. You have to look abroad. You have to invest in Asia. You have to own real things. Well, I'll tell you,
Peter, if the Fed begins to buy up Treasury debt as they sort of tip their toes in the water so far, all bets are off. They claim they're not going to do that. But I got to ask, Peter, are you still running for the United States Senate?
Oh, yeah, I'm still running. I mean, somebody's got to go to Washington and put a stop to this. I mean, the main reason I want to get there is to prevent this worst case scenario from actually unfolding. Because unfortunately, the people that are in office right now, the politicians, all they're doing is trying to keep themselves stay in office. They're doing what's expedient and not what's right. And somebody has to let them know how high the stakes are, that we can't keep doing what we've been doing. We need serious reform in Washington. We need to slash government spending. We can't spend $3.8 trillion. I don't even think we should be spending $2.8 trillion. We have to slash federal spending right now.
The question is whether, if you were to get in as a Republican from the state of Connecticut, that you could convince the rest of Congress to cut Social Security, cut some of Medicare, cut the entitlement programs, because guys like Neil Ferguson at Harvard say you have to do it.
I'm going to try. That's why I want to go there. We need to cut these programs. We need to cut them now. And we need to admit that they don't work, that they were bad ideas from the beginning. We can't keep hiding behind the politics of it, because these guys are too afraid to confront these special interests because they're afraid they might lose their jobs. Well, you know, a lot of other Americans are losing their jobs right now because these guys are so focused on keeping theirs.
Okay, Peter Schiff. Good to see you again, Euro Pacific. Peter Schiff.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for coming on. Well, it may have been the best weather in the entire United States.